I agree with you, but there are a lot of people who are parsing the statements by those two companies. They're relatively firm denials, but there are ways in which to read them. The Amazon statement refers to AWS, and maybe it doesn't refer to Amazon more broadly. And Apple's statement refers to servers that were deployed in their services. So there are windows in their statements.
But it doesn't answer the question
conspiracy theories.
Overall, Henry, of why they would lie about. Why wouldn't they just say, here's what happened, consumer data wasn't compromised, we had some corporate issues, but we're continuing to be vigilant about this. I mean,
well, it's a little embarrassing, for one.
Well, yeah, but embarrassing stuff happens all the time. This is, in a way, the least embarrassing kind of breach, if it's a unicorn jumping over a rainbow. That hardly ever happens. And customer data wasn't compromised.
Right, and they came out and said, look, here's what we do. We test everything we get. This issue came up in due diligence on an acquisition for Amazon, so it appears that they caught it, so forth. So I think they actually look like they are in command of what they're buying and what they're doing. I think the broader question here is this is something that people have theorized about for a long time. Hey, all this stuff is made in China. Maybe it's getting baked in there, and we've got all these things watching us all over the place. Well, okay, this is a step toward that, and I do think it's very interesting with President Trump and some of the tariffs and so forth, this national security justification used in the car industry. This might be where you actually start to see some national security justifications for tariffs and bringing manufacturing here in this industry.
And there have been so many movie plots about this. This has been, this is like science fiction brought to life. I mean, this is something that people have been speculating about for so long. But if this is actually something that needs to be examined as a security threat, I think it does put the spotlight on the Apples and Amazons of the world in a different way. I mean, just yesterday, we were here talking about Tim Cook denying the fact that they have any privacy issues because they're hardware. We're hardware. We don't have to worry about privacy issues. That's an issue for software. That's an issue for Facebook and Google. But I think now the fact that they're hardware raises a whole other kind of issue, and I'm curious what's going to come of that.
I think there are two matters. One is the reality here. It seems like user data was not compromised, and if it was in there, they probably caught it based on their statements. But the second issue is the one that Henry points to, which is that the supply chain for most of the technology that we use passes through China at one point or another. And actually, in this instance, it's actually a company that has employees who are Chinese based in California as well. I think the real ramification of this story today is pressure on a supply chain that runs through China in terms of ratcheting up the call for protectionism, for trying to fix that. I don't know how you do that without raising the prices for tech goods dramatically. And I think, among other things, it's another thing in the potentially inflationary basket over time.
I was going to say, we talked to the Sonos chief yesterday and asked him how quickly some of these supply chains can be moved to Vietnam. It's not like flipping a switch. Very expensive and takes a long time.
But the most infamous case of this sort of thing, which I believe we heard about from Ed Snowden, was the U.S. doing this, excuse me, to Cisco equipment that was heading out to other countries. Yeah. So, I mean, the idea that this gets fixed by moving out of China and that the U.S. is completely pure in all this, questionable.
Yeah, I agree.